Performing well in the NFL is no easy task. Everything must go smoothly, just even to score a field goal or a touchdown on drives. And it's even harder to win games, let alone multiple. To win double-digit games is beyond impressive, and usually, if you do that, you make the playoffs. And to make the playoffs is one thing, but to actually win 3 games and make it to the Super Bowl is, well, it's just not an easy task at all, as you're going up against the same type of teams that have their best talent on the field playing at a high level. So to win the Super Bowl, it's such an incredibly hard task, and to do so even once is so incredibly hard. All your personnel have to perform well at the right times. All your coaches have to make the right moves and adjust to twists and turns of an NFL game brings. And your management has to load your team with talent. It's no easy task building an NFL franchise, let alone winning with one too. Every year, teams assemble their teams with the hopes of winning a Super Bowl. Some realize they still have quite a while to go until they reach that point, while others are in win now mode. So today, we look at the top NFL franchises that deserve a Super Bowl. So without further delay, let's dive in. When you look at NFL teams that are deserving of a Super Bowl, you have to think of the fans, as they are the ones who are the main reason the team is even relevant. If a club had no fans and couldn't sell any tickets, just imagine where the state of the ball club would be. Especially in the earlier part of the NFL. Back in the 1920s to 1940s, quite a few football clubs established themselves, but had to end up folding because of multiple reasons. Some of them included their players getting drafted into the war, and the main one had to do with the teams not being able to sell enough tickets. Think about the 1930s and the Great Depression, all the hard economic times there were. Not everyone could afford to buy tickets to see these football games even if they wanted to. And obviously, as we know now, there are 32 NFL franchises, and the years went on, more and more clubs were founded, and some of those still have yet to win a Super Bowl, or at least a second. So that's what we're here looking for. We start off with the Detroit Lions, and if there's a team whose fans aren't deserving of a Lombardi trophy, then I don't know who is. I mean, let's be real. The Detroit Lions were founded in 1929, that's almost 100 years ago, and they have zero Super Bowls to show for it. Lions fans have had to deal with it all their team's existence. And they did win 4 NFL championships before the NFL merged with the AFL, but still, their last championship win was in 1957, and Detroit fans simply deserve better. It took them 13 years to make it back to the playoffs after they won their 1957 NFL championship game in the year 1970, but they lost that game. And then another 12 years until their next appearance, but they also lost that one. They made it again 9 years later in 1991, and believe it or not, they won, defeating the Cowboys 38-6, before they lost to Washington in the NFC Championship game. And they haven't won an NFL playoff game since then. That's 15 years before YouTube was even made in 2005. That's crazy, and watch out, Dolphins fans, because you're second place behind them, as it's been 22 years since you last won a playoff game. The Lions are known for having some of the greatest players in NFL history and having nothing to come of it. Hall of Famers Barry Sanders and Calvin Johnson are both considered among the top 3 in their respective positions all time in the NFL, and yet they played on the Detroit Lions teams that could never make it over the hump of winning enough to make it to the Super Bowl. Fast forward to the year 2008. The Lions roster was just atrocious. Their defense ranked at the bottom of the NFL, and their offense, led by quarterback Dan Orlovsky and Dante Culpepper, was among the worst, ranking 27th out of 32 teams. They threw for 18 touchdowns to 19 touchdowns the entire year. Talk about disappointment. Their struggles in 2008 gave them the first overall pick in 2009, and who did they draft with that pick? None other than Matthew Stafford, out of Georgia. And we'll give credit where credit is due. In due time, Stafford emerged as Detroit's all-time leader in pretty much every category. He gave Detroit fans a lot of hope with his drafting, but the Lions only managed to make it to the wildcard game 3 times, which is an accomplishment in itself considering how abysmal some of these Detroit teams were. And 3 playoff appearances and no wins ended Stafford's 12-year career with the Lions. Funny enough, as soon as he was traded to the Rams, he wins the Super Bowl on a loaded LA team. But that just goes to show you how Detroit has been one of the league's laughingstocks for quite some time now. So as Detroit enters the 2023 season, the Super Bowl isn't likely, but the playoffs might be in sight. but for their fans, they deserve so much better. Another team that comes to mind when talking about horrible experiences is who else but the Cleveland Browns. Their poor fans have had to endure every bit of hurt and pain throughout their 80-year existence. Just like Detroit fans, Browns fans have never had the luxury of watching their team play for the Lombardi Trophy under the bright lights that we call the Super Bowl. They did start their franchise off on a hot note, hiring Paul Brown as their head coach, where he is now a Hall of Famer, amassing a 167, 53, and 8 record while coaching the Browns. The Browns won 3 NFL championships from 1946 to 55, but the fun stops there. After Browns' time in Cleveland was done, the Browns have made the playoffs 15 times since then, and not one of those postseason runs has led to the Browns' greatness. A lot of the time, the Browns have exited the playoffs in the most heartbreaking way possible. In January of 1987, the Browns had a memorable year, sporting a 10-5 record and advanced all the way to the AFC Championship game. But who was waiting for them there? None other than John Elway and the Denver Broncos. Down by 7 and deep in their own territory, Elway and the Broncos marched 98 yards downfield in just 5 minutes to score a game-tying touchdown. They would then go on to score a game-winning field goal in overtime to send the Browns packing home and ending their near Super Bowl appearance in heartbreaking fashion. And just a year later, the Browns found themselves back in the playoffs, this time in the wild card. And who did they play? John Elway and the Denver Broncos yet again. The Browns were trailing early in this game until they found themselves down by only 7. And with the game on the line, halfback Ernest Biner coughed up the ball at about the 3-yard line, where the Broncos would go on to secure the W. If that isn't a classic example of the Cleveland Browns, then I don't know what is. In the past 20 years, the Browns have only made the playoffs 3 times and just once in the past 10. The poor Cleveland Brown fans have had so much to deal with in their times as fans, and to be a true fan of the Dog Pound, it's harder and harder thing to deal with every season. And if you're enjoying this video, be sure to like and subscribe, as it only takes a couple of seconds of your time and it helps us out tremendously to help grow our channel. Before we look at the last team on the list, we'd like to give a shout out to a few honorable mentions of teams that have been closer to the big game in recent years, but it has still been a while since their team has truly been anything significant. The Miami Dolphins have 2 Super Bowls to their name, and both of those came in back-to-back years in 73 and 74. The Bears have just 1 Super Bowl to their name in their 100-year existence, and haven't won a playoff game since 2010. Like the Bears, the Jets only have 1 Super Bowl to their name and haven't won a playoff game since 2011. The Washington Commanders last won a playoff game in 2006, but have 3 Super Bowl titles to their name. The last honorable mention is the Cincinnati Bengals. It's hard to leave them off the top of 3 of this list, and as we also know that the Bengals came away with 0 titles in their 3 appearances, but have been exceptional in recent years and have had a better stroke of luck than the Bills, at least by a little bit. And the last team on our list of fans' teams that deserve a Super Bowl is the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo appeared in 4 Super Bowls in back-to-back years from 1990 to 93 and came away with exactly 0 titles. Sure, they've been a hot team recently, making the playoffs in the past 4 years, and possibly could win it all, so long as their cards fall right. But what about all those years prior for the fans? Bills Mafia is the epitome of what true fans look like, and we love Buffalo's fans and know just how dedicated they are. But despite their recent success and trips to the big game in the 90s, the Bills still have their very own unlucky moments. Remember the AFC divisional game against the Chiefs in 2021 where they lost the coin toss, which ultimately lost them the game? Or how about having to be in a division with Tom Brady and the New England Patriots dynasty that has hurt some of their playoff chances? Remember how close the Bills were to winning the Super Bowl against the Giants, and the game-winning field goal sailed wide right from kicker Scott Norwood. Bills fans have had to deal with every bit of anguish and pain that Lions and Browns fans have had to deal with, just not as much of it. If you think your team or another should have made this list, let us know why they deserve to win a Super Bowl. Be sure to like and subscribe, and to be safe and be well. Stay blessed.